Kia ora everyone, Lewis Ferris here with a wee national weather update as we get through this working week and towards that weekend. So Thursday, here we are around midday, we can see some cold fronts moving in from the southwest. Now these aren't going to be bringing heaps of weather, but there is some potentially heavy showers along that west coast as those fronts progress up and down even in that sort of southeastern corner as well. A little potential for some thunderstorms, but what we're going to notice is really a freshening of that air. It is going to chop away a lot of that high humidity air that we've been dealing with over the last few days, and it will just generally be a lot fresher around the country. So really getting towards the end of Thursday, we can see those fronts are making their way up the west coast, and we do have that cool air moving in down south as well. As we move through overnight into Friday, we're going to see those progress further up the country, but they kind of weaken as they do. So we've moved around now into Friday morning. A general southwest flow across the South Island, but the North Island still looking relatively clear. There is some cloud about, but most of that wet weather hasn't quite made it there yet. So we're going to take a look at the temperatures. Tomorrow morning around the South Island, especially further south, they're going to notice a little bit more chill to the air. We're going to get those low temperatures down into the single digits, which we haven't been seeing too much of recently. We see those low teens spreading up the South Island, but as we get into the North Island, that cold air hasn't arrived yet. So we are still going to see those morning temperatures still firmly in the teens, mid-teens, even getting up towards that 20-degree mark the further north we go. Now looking back through the rest of Friday, so we can see those fronts do make their way up into the North Island and bringing some wet weather with them, but it has been incredibly dry. So this rain, these showers aren't going to do too much to alleviate the very dry conditions that we're seeing around the country currently. Towards the end of Friday, we do have another little cool air mass, which is going to bring a bit more of that wet weather into those far southern parts at the end of Friday. But we can see generally that southwest flow then turning a little bit more pure southerly, and we have that opening up of the isobars as we move over the North Island. So there's not really going to be too much in the way of wind with that. So taking a look specifically at the North Island here, we can see this band of showers making its way on from the southwest. That is going to spread over the country, but like I said, it's not going to bring heaps in the way of wet weather. It might just be some brief showers, maybe a little bit more around that central plateau area, maybe a bit more persistent in terms of rain, but clearing out as that day moves on. These showers, as they move over the east coast, or up the east coast, could potentially be heavy. There is a risk of some thunderstorms moving across the region, but we can see by the time we get to end of Friday, basically the skies are clear. Any sort of wet weather looks to have already moved away, so it is going to be that brief little dampening of the soils. The temperatures, however, are still going to be very warm in these eastern areas, looking at 27 degrees, and as we move up the North Island, still around those mid to high 20s. That cooler air is arriving, so it does look like as we move into the weekend, things will be a little bit fresher. Those overnight temperatures maybe taking a little dip around these central plateau areas, around Taupo, Rotorua, even down here in Wellington, seeing the morning low on Saturday around 12 degrees. Down into the South Island, so the action has arrived a little bit earlier. Friday morning we can see those showers definitely up the west coast, but some of those making their way into the southern areas as well. In the afternoon we might see some of these around the parts of Canterbury, North Canterbury into Marlborough. It does look like they will just kind of sit around, but again, they're not going to be bringing huge amounts of rain, and it was that next sort of cold front moving on to the southwest in the later parts of the day, which will just bring another burst of that rain. But we see skies are pretty clear around those eastern and up into the northern parts by the end of Friday. And the temperatures, they have already mainly taken a dip around the South Island on Friday. With that cool air moving in, is already going to drop those temperatures around Canterbury, a high of just 18 degrees for Christchurch. Further north around Blenheim might still manage to get around those mid-20s as that cool air hasn't quite moved in yet, but we can see dropping down to 9 degrees. That is on Saturday morning, so that cool air is there. And then clear skies potentially overnight. We'll see that morning temperature quite low around the South Island, maybe lower than we've seen it recently on Saturday morning. Now, taking a look forward into the week, we can see this high pressure system out in the Tasman Sea is gradually making its way towards the country. So we do have that general south-southwest wind flow, but it is very weak. You can see that opening up of the isobars. I wouldn't expect too much in the way of wind really around many places through the weekend. There will, however, still be some cloud. There is some moisture that is going to linger around. It will maybe bring a few little showers, some drizzly stuff. It does look like around these eastern areas of the South Island, but again, it's not going to amount to heaps of rain. It just might be that difference between packing a little rain jacket if you're out walking the dog or something along those lines. Moving into Sunday, it's very much the same story. Some places will be clear and sunny and warm, but some places will deal with a little bit more cloud. We are looking at those eastern coasts of the South Island again. Across the North Island, there will again be some cloud that will kind of pop up in the afternoon, potentially even some showers, but they will be sort of isolated. They're not going to affect everywhere, and they won't be long lasting. So we can see this is the very beginning of Monday, and there's not too much weather around the country. That's all from me now. For more information, head to metservice.com.